Yeah, hi there. These comments are for 8651, and I am Professor Buckoff, your English 106 instructor here at California State, San Bernardino. So how are you doing today? I just read your paper for our 106 class. You're working on essay number 2. You're getting there. In fact, you almost made the required length for this paper. The requirement was 3 to 4 pages. You got 2 pages and almost a third page. So you're getting better. You're starting to kind of develop your ideas a little more, which is good. I think last quarter your final paper just wasn't a lot of thought or depth to the ideas, and I think you're trying. However, you're still not there yet, unfortunately. On this one, on the rubrics, I'm looking at them right now, you got 33 points out of 50, which puts you at 66% on this assignment. So it means that you really have no room for any low scores in this class now. You want to make sure you turn in both response journals. You definitely want to get credit for that. You can also, you have a 30-point writing assignment that's coming up. You want to make sure you do very well there. In fact, come by and talk to me. Come by my office. I'm in my office right now, right? So I've already talked to most of you guys in the class, but you're probably one of maybe 2 or 3 students who have not come by to talk to me with help with your paper, and it's okay to ask for help. That's what we do as professors. So what you can do is you can make an outline of how you want to work on your next project and bring the outline over. And I've noticed that with a lot of your assignments, you have trouble with the thesis statement, right? So what if you go to Google, type in these keywords, how to write a thesis statement for a college level writing assignment. So study up a little bit. I think you can improve in that area also. Now, in fact, with your thesis in the beginning, here's what you said. You say how things get to be cool. Then you say Durf made a comic in the 1900s called The City, which talked about a trend which art students began wearing. He wrote about, so say I believe his theory was on how all this works. For example, how could a trend come about from one couple of people to hundreds or millions and eventually die down? So if you take a look at another thesis, let me show you what this writer does. It says, John Bachter shows how these fashion trends turn out to be cool. Throughout this paper, I'd like to state Durf's theory, elaborate the hidden meaning, and test his theory. So this particular thesis, what it does is it restates the 3 parts of the assignment, which you did not do. So what you have to do is you have to look at what you're trying to do in the paper. What are the actual parts of the paper, and then how can you write a thesis that addresses those different parts? It's kind of like this. I mean, watch the news today. How about this? Watch the 5 or 6 o'clock news. You ever heard of a weather forecast? Think about that. What does the meteorologist do in a weather forecast? They tell you what's going to happen over several days. Maybe a 3-day weather forecast, a 5-day weather forecast, maybe even a 10-day weather forecast, right? That's what you have to do. You have to create a forecast statement in the beginning of your introduction that effectively frames the different parts of your project. So that's definitely one improvement that you can make. Now, the next one, it has to do with part 2. Part 2, you really struggle with. You're trying to interpret what you think a hidden meaning is, and I just think you really just didn't get deep enough with that. Let me see what you wrote here. You have the message was showing us how a trend could be good or bad and how quickly trends pick up on things and people start doing them. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Now, let me give you an example of another student in the class. Let me read you what she wrote about part 2. Remember that in order to answer part 2, you have to consider the year in which the cartoon was written, 1999. You have to consider Durf's background and any other events which may influence his ideas. So this writer says, from Durf's theory, it is shown through the comic that his cartoons are representing the trends and how it has grown to be well known, but there may be a deeper meaning to his cartoons. from Durst's past. He had a friend from his childhood that happened to end up being one of the country's notorious serial killers, also known as Jeffrey Dahmer. Dahmer never got the attention as a child and grew up isolated and quiet. He never got the influence from his parents to see what was right or from wrong. I believe this cartoon can represent how much we can be influenced by the people or events happening in our lives, even in the most dramatic ways. Durst has shown in his comic that people are influenced to get a trend going. For Durst's friend, his parents were a set that influenced him in his life. It shaped his mind to being a serial killer. Durst saw how his friend, Dahmer, was introverted because his parents were never really there for him, especially since his mom was an addict. That may have been part of his influence in life. From the cartoon, it shows how an influence of a trend may start something to have a bigger outcome. You see that? So she actually spends kind of a whole paragraph kind of hitting on some of Durst's background, including a discussion of Jeffrey Dahmer, and then ties that into what she thinks the meaning of the cartoon is. So you didn't quite do that. You didn't get deep enough or complex enough. You didn't think through maybe enough of how you wanted to do your interpretation. So that's probably something that you're still trying to work on, is to consider pushing yourself a little bit more than you are with your writing. That means you got to come by my office, you got to consult the Writing Center tutors. That means you have to do some research. You have to go online and actually read about Durst, read about his background, read about some of the events in 1995. You have to do quite a bit of research, I think, before you can really come up with a meaningfully thought out interpretation. It's hard work. You got to wrestle. You got to wrestle with the text a little bit. Right now, the other thing you can probably work on a little bit more also is with the third part of the question. The question is this. It's you should make it clear whether Durst's theory affirms, revises, or refutes Durst's theory. I don't think you fully tied your ideas back to that. You did talk about a fad, if I remember correctly here, the Apple Watch, right? And when you talk about the Apple Watch, we did this exercise in class. I mean, you should take some time to actually describe it, maybe in 50 words or so. So what is exactly the Apple Watch? How does it work? What does it look like? What colors does it come in? Are there least or most expensive models to this particular watch? So I noticed that you didn't really say much about it at all. In fact, in your essay, when you talked about it, you said the latest trend I hear my friends talk about is wanting an Apple Watch. But then after that, instead of describing it, you just said, although I think it's cool, I would get one, not for that type of money. So you didn't really spend much time on it, but that was really the whole centerpiece of the third part of the assignment. And the most interesting thing here is what you're trying to do is to focus maybe on why someone would buy an Apple Watch, or why someone, either you or someone you know, would follow a trend, but your writing kind of strayed from the focus. I mean, if you look at the assignment, or actually if you look at what you wrote here, let me go to the last page. You say I even seen trends on the internet. You want to use the word saw there, by the way. We have the verb see, saw, seen. So seen is the past participle form of the verb see. So then you say, I see you today in class, or I saw you in class last Thursday, or I have seen my students in class recently. Something like that. So again, see, saw, seen. But you say, I learned a while back it's not good to be known by everyone because it just gets you in a lot of trouble, because you could do hurtful or bad things on the internet, ruin someone's life. That saying, if someone started a fan, was shooting yourself in the foot, I wonder how many would follow. But see, that doesn't go back to the purpose. The purpose of what you're trying to do here is to make it clear whether his experience affirms, revises, or refutes Durst's theory. That was the purpose of the last part of the writing assignment. So that's kind of what you're trying to do there. So overall, I think you're getting closer, I think, to college level writing, but for whatever reason you're still not exactly there yet. The main thing that I'm seeing really is just the lack of depth, the lack of thought. You got to put a lot more effort, I think, into the writing, however you can. I know it's not easy for me to say that, right? Because I teach composition, but what you have to do is you have to say, okay, what could I do differently when I approach my next project? Because think about it. I mean, the next project you're working on right now is you're working on that 11-page article that we went through in 2 class sessions this week. You're trying to make sure you understand it, first of all, and then you have to create a writing assignment that focuses in 4 specific areas. So the best thing you can do really is to outline. Do what a lot of students do. They'll make an outline, they'll come by my office, we'll work on that, make a few changes, you revise that, then you write the paper, then you come back, I read it, I make a few more changes, and we just kind of go through the process until you feel like you're really comfortable with the assignment. Alright, anyway, thank you very much for your hard work, and hang in there. And I look forward to reading your next paper.